Now you've made it to module 2, I want to talk to you about essential oils and how you're going to be using them in your natural and organic skincare formulations. When you first get started, it's very tempting to go out and buy lots of these and put lots and lots of them into your products. And we're going to cover more on this in module 4 on how to blend them and their therapeutic properties. And we're also going to cover a little bit more about the legislation in module 5. But before you start formulating, I just want to tell you a little bit about their safety and just run you through a couple of essential oils that are quite heavily restricted for their use in skincare. Now, essential oils are just that. They are the essence of a plant in a bottle, and they're produced through a variety of different means, through steam distillation, through solvent extraction, by cold pressing them, particularly in the case of certain citrus oils, and also you can get CO2 extracts, which are produced through CO2 supercritical gas extraction, a much purer version of an essential oil and has a very different fragrance. Now, these aren't just one chemical compound in a bottle. This is hundreds and hundreds of different chemical compounds which create a very complex essence of a plant. I like to think of them as a little plant bomb in a bottle, effectively, because they are so potent and they need to be treated with reverence for that particular reason. On this course, we will recommend that you use between 0 and 3% of essential oil in your product. You don't have to use it, and if you do, just make sure that you use a safe amount. Now, how do you determine what's a safe amount of essential oil in your product? It depends on where you are in the world. So it depends on which regulations you're complying with. It depends on whether your product is leave-on versus rinse-off. It depends on whether your product is aimed at the face or for the body. And most importantly, it depends on which ingredient you're going to be using, which essential oil, because they contain so many different chemicals that we can't give you a particular rule of thumb to say you must only use 2.5% of every single essential oil, because it varies per plant. So let me tell you a little bit more about the regulations that you'll be coming up against if you're using essential oils in your products. There's a trade body called the IFRA, the International Fragrance Association, who issue guidelines every couple of years regarding the use of fragrance compounds, and that includes synthetic as well as natural ones. And if you go to their website, you can see all of the fragrance compounds that they regulate and the levels that they recommend you adhere to when you're creating skincare. If you are selling in the EU, then you will have to comply with those regulations or with those guidelines. Even if you have an Etsy shop in the US, if you have a customer in the EU, you will still have to meet those regulations, which is why we teach them, because ultimately they are probably going to come into force for most countries in the world once some of the weaker cosmetics regulations eventually catch up with them. So, what does the IFRA recommend in terms of certain essential oils? Let me tell you about a couple of problem ingredients that we come up against a lot in coursework, because some of these essential oils are wonderful for the skin, but they are also unfortunately quite heavily regulated. One of those is rose. Here's Rose Absolute, which is created through solvent extraction. You can see it there, thousands of petals to create that very expensive little plant bomb in a bottle. Rose contains a compound called methyl eugenol, which is a suspected carcinogen and is heavily regulated. So whilst it's very tempting to say I'm going to stick 1% rose oil in my product, unfortunately this isn't allowed legally in some cosmetic regulations around the world, and it also isn't a good idea from a safety perspective. So if you want rose in your product, make sure that you keep it to minuscule amounts, unfortunately. I don't like telling you this, but it's there for a reason. And if you want other essential oils that smell of rose, then maybe you'll want to consider using rose geranium or palmarosa. And then again, you might want to be keeping those to around about 0.5 to 1%. Another essential oil that is heavily regulated, or absolute, I should say, is jasmine. You can't see that one because the bottle's blue, but jasmine absolute is also created through solvent extraction and has a wonderful fragrance, wonderful floral fragrance, but again it is very heavily regulated, so you should be looking at no more than about 0.4% for the face and 0.7% for the body. Other problem ingredients include phototoxic citrus oils. So citrus oils can be photosensitizing, which means that if your customer actually applies a product to their skin which has citrus oils in it and then goes into the sun, it can actually damage their skin, which is not what you want and not what your customer wants. The ones that are most heavily regulated include bergamot and lime essential oils, which are restricted to 0.4% for bergamot and 0.7% for lime oils in leave-on products. And if they're then combined with other photosensitizing oils such as grapefruit or lemon, the allowable levels are reduced even further. You can get around this by using FCF bergamot oil, furocoumarin-free bergamot oil, or by using the distilled rather than the cold expressed lime oil, but the scent is not quite the same, so you're going to have to play around and find something that works for you. Mandarin and sweet orange essential oils, on the other hand, although they are citrus oils, they have quite low phototoxicity, so they're not really restricted in practice. You've also got oils that are quite high in a compound called citral, which is one of these sensitizers that are listed on the labels. Now, citral is a very powerful skin sensitizer and is quite heavily restricted in leave-on products. Oils that contain quite high levels of citral include lemongrass and Mei Chang oils, and they're limited to 0.3% in face and hand creams under the IFRA guidelines. There are even tighter restrictions in lip and deodorant products. So other essential oils that are quite high in citral include lemon-scented tea tree, lemon myrtle, and lemon balm. So as you can see, there are regulations out there that are saying, well, they're not really regulations, there are guidelines out there that are recommending that you use very low percentages of essential oils. And they are there for a reason, because they're there to protect you and they're there to protect your customers. So on this course, when you see a certain limit of essential oils in your formulations or in the sample formulations, then you're going to have to go out and research the actual ingredients that you want to use and find out what is safe. We're going to try and give you as much information as we can, and the tutors that mark your coursework will also be giving you feedback on that respect. But make sure that you get some good coursework books as well, like this one, which is in the recommended reading guide, Aroma Dermatology, and this one on essential oil safety, which is a great book, but which is unfortunately quite expensive. Those two can really help you understand essential oils as well, and how you should and shouldn't be using them for the skin and how they can be safe. So that was my brief overview of using essential oils in skincare. So remember, when it says 1 to 3% in our coursework, that doesn't mean that you then go and get 3% cold pressed lime oil and chuck it in. No, you need to go and research your ingredients properly and find out what can and can't be used at what percentages in the skincare products that you're creating. Don't be too scared about it though. We don't expect you to know everything at this stage, and we are here to help you. You're still only on Module 2, and as I said, in Module 4 you'll be covering a lot more on essential oils, on how to blend them, and in Module 5 you'll be looking at the legalities around them. But I've just got this video in here to get you started with your first formulations and how to use essential oils in them. Essential oils are fantastic additions to skincare, and by using them you will be setting yourself apart from the mainstream synthetic cosmetic industry. They're using fragrance oils which generally don't have any therapeutic properties, whereas you might be using these wonderful little plant bombs in a bottle. So go and have fun with it. Treat them with the reverence they deserve, but make sure that you experiment, make sure that you get to know the fragrances and enjoy it, because ultimately they have a lot of wonderful therapeutic properties to add to your skincare.